Welcome everyone to the second live chat. We're gonna really just answer questions today. This is the Ask Us Anything chat.
Not anything.
Yeah. So the way that Ask Us Anything
us anything, but we might not answer everything.
Exactly. So you can ask any question, and we will choose how exactly we answer that. Now, this focus obviously is on the Nile Empire Kickstarter and things related to that, and I sort of kind of offered that we could also answer things about Targeternate in general, if those kinds of questions come up, and Kickstarter in general, since there was some chat in the comments about that. And so
I know people are really keen on that. Do we have a plan? Is there a plan? Yes, there's a plan.
Yeah. So we'll just talk.
It's not a Cylon plan either.
Better than a Cylon plan.
That's not a very high bar to get over.
Hey, look, baby steps. All right.
Yep. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. We did have actually some upvoted questions this time, so we will begin with the ones that got 2 votes.
Oh, yeah. I should have gone in and upvoted, like cherry-picked and upvoted a couple of them. Damn it.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
Let's go with this one first, because I know this is a kind of a teaser, and Darrell, it's going to be up to you how much detail you go into this.
I always spoil everything.
So the first part of this question, is there an upper limit stretch goal in mind for the Nile Empire similar to the vote for Axiom Changes that occurred with the Living Land? I'll start there, and then I'll get to the next part.
Okay, so there we have, because we actually, like, last Kickstarter surprised us. You know, it did better than our wildest projection. So we ran out. We were like, oh man, we were struggling. This time we planned up to 250K. Now, but I will say one of the things that we did that will hopefully this is going to work out well, is anything that there will be an add-on connected to happens before the 200K. So we literally just unlocked the last one that does an add-on for people now. And that was, so in the end, there weren't like last minute, well, what we thought would be last minute, open ups and surprises, like, 15 minutes to go, we unlocked this thing and now no one can order it. That's what we wanted to avoid. Everything physically add-on is now like on that list. You can see it. And then above the 200K, we have a lot of the enhancements to stuff that's already there, more web items like web cards, web adventures, the 205K spoiler that Deanna and I are both excited about. Core religions.
What was that?
Was it? Sorry, did you cough a little?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a core with religion stuck in my throat.
Yeah, good stuff. The 195 that we revealed, just to be clear, is the map pack. It's the second map pack, right? So we had already had one, or am I wrong?
Correct. No, we got one. This is map pack 2. If I could talk.
So at 195, that's the last one we just revealed. That's still locked technically, but we'll get there.
Yeah, well, we assume, right? But you never know. Like, there's all sorts of surprises that happen, and this is something we'll talk about when we go into the Kickstarter mechanics, because there's only so many factors you can take into account.
Right, but there's a lot that we do take into it.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that. So that answers. But the first thing about that question was the question about the vote for Axiom Changes.
Yeah.
Was there a stretch goal in mind that you had?
There actually is a stretch goal. I don't think we're going to reach it, to be honest. And I know some people are going to be happy about that, and some people will be disappointed. If we get to it, what it is, the character that we are always like, we're never sure about is the insidious Wuhan, right? Because I mean, he's kind of awesome and kind of hilarious, but he's also kind of super racist. So we're like, ooh, like that's a weird like line. Like how do we approach that? And we're like, let's put it out to the people. Like, hey, Wuhan's gonna have his uprising. Are you backing him or not? Like, so you're a Cairo gangster or a supervillain. Are you following his lead, or are you just like, oh God, no? And we're going to use that to kind of, how important is Wuhan going to be going into year 2? I mean, we know stuff's going to happen, but we kind of wanted to see what support he has out there. We'll find other ways to do that. But I thought a vote would have been.
Yeah, and to be clear, if the fans are like, no, we really want to keep him around, you guys have already put in to the setting kind of this meta awareness of, yeah, no, we get it. We get it. Like, Yellow Barrel.
What the hell is going on? What's up with that guy?
and everybody in universe is even aware of how like.
But
what's
yeah? But then the question becomes like, does that work? Is that still too tone deaf?
Yeah.
And that's what we find out as we go. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so sort of how that gets handled, because there may be something kind of satisfying on a meta level of, no, we took this guy down.
Yeah. Right, and that's
realistically, I think that if he wasn't so important to the Nile Empire in specifics, we would have just dropped. But he is. And so we needed to figure out a way to sort of thread that needle.
Right. Well, and I think what's cool about Wuhan is, and someone, John just mentioned in the chat, he knows it too, eventually. Yeah. Like, he becomes genre aware, and this was like, oh man, this is pretty messed up. It's like, oh, there's so much meat there. He's such an interesting character. I'm getting some echo off something.
Yeah.
But and he's just cool, right? Like, I mean, in his own way. But it's not just about what we think, and that's the other thing. Is like, hey, look. Maybe there are people that are being put off of Torg because he exists, and we don't, and that's what we want to avoid. So,
exactly. So putting it that's the vote, John, that we have with this one.
Which probably won't be part of the Kickstarter, but like I said, we'll find ways. And I miscredited it was Mark that called out the short story where Wuhan becomes genre savvy.
All right, here's a quick one. Can we hope that Santa Claus will bring us some PDFs in this hood for December 25th after the end of the Kickstarter?
Files are staged. We're ready to go. So this was the plan that we were going to do last time with the Living Land, and it didn't quite happen because the technical issues kind of beyond our control. It wasn't anything writing or production-wise. So barring a last-minute surprise like that, we've got the source book, we've got the adventure, Fires of Ra, we've got the Delphi missions, and we're debating. I think the cards too, because I think people are really interested in the deck and playing with it, in their own way. So those are going to go Christmas Eve. What's Santa's home costume? Probably Isle.
Isle, yeah, I would say it's probably Isle. Makes sense. That's the Nordic one.
But yeah, like literally, and as usual, we're going to do one of these as we close down the Kickstarter, and while we're talking, that link will go out. So hopefully, people can have some fun over the holidays with that stuff.
Yeah, and the the key there. And Deanna, I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah,
you echoing.
you.
Just you.
Headphones.
I don't know if you have the ability to put on headphones.
Oh, are you getting an echo?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll go get some headphones.
Okay, we'll give her a second to do that. So yeah, like we did with
he'd be RoboClaws. Sorry,
that's the Futurama. But yeah, so like we did with Living Land, just so everybody knows, the way that we'll do it is the first link that goes out, it will be on a backer only update right after we close, and it'll be a link to a drive-through product that is the preview product. This is not the final product, and that's because we have to reserve the ability to send that out only to people whose orders actually go through. And we do this on Kickstarter before Kickstarter has processed payment. But everybody gets it. Everybody gets those preview files, and then later you get the official product link,
right?
And that gets sent out to official backers.
Yeah.
Is Krampus Ororsh or Tharkle?
Is there a difference?
I mean, it's a slightly different flavor, I think.
I would go Tharkle for Krampus. Yeah. And the other thing about this, just like Living Land, I think this worked pretty good there, is we're going to try and minimize the number of file times that we send the file out. So there will be the preview that goes out as the link, and then by the time we have all the edits and it's gone to the printer, then we'll send out the real one, and that hopefully will be the only version that we send out. So.
Okay, so while I'm responding to some chat, let me show the next question. Actually,
Deanna, if you're back,
I want to save that one.
Yeah,
here we go. Deanna's back. Okay, perfect timing. Great. So, looking at the way the Cosms are being released, this is George Anderson asking, each with a big multi-act adventure, which is awesome. It had to be pretty obvious to Darrell and others that this is a lot of stuff, even before year 2 when the war really heats up. What is Darrell's and Deanna's and others involved vision for how groups that want to play through the entire campaign should handle it? So if you want to do it all, how can you accomplish that without being deities by year 3?
So it requires a lot of acts to become a deity. There's a lot, So I mean, I think we've published now how the clearance levels go up. And the other interesting thing about the clearance levels is yes, you get access to more powerful stuff, but the very nature of the clearance level gives the GM more leeway and power and things like that too. So that, I mean, there's a little bit of nudging that has to happen to the adventures, but I mean, if you do manage to get through beta clearance, before Aurorsh, well, that just means either you can run it as is and it will be a little less just straight up, oh, you die. Or we'll have and I can't wait till people see the Nile one, because we did that. We've incorporated the tips and tricks that we did for the beta primer into the book and say, hey, look, if you're a beta going into this, first off, try it as is. It's probably going to be okay. If it's not challenging enough, here are the specific things to do, like adding to these encounters or these types of foes that are going to increase that challenge, and keep everyone invested. And we'll keep doing that as we go, because though personally, in the comments, someone was talking about when they do theirs, they're doing a different group in each Cosm and then taking an all-stars in the year 2. And I love that. I think that's really, really cool. But we're assuming it's one group going through all of these. They just have a really busy, end of year 1. And Deanna, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Just that I do it in troop style. I mean, it's sort of like the Avengers, where the team changes in composition as you go along, and it doesn't mean that these other characters aren't doing anything. They're just not the spotlight characters for your TV series, so to speak, at that time. So I think that I can understand why you want to start with one character and go for years.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the only way to do it. And there's nothing that really stops you from, if you, say, want to play an alpha or low beta for a long time, that once the gamma level adventures come out, that's when you can go just boost people up. You don't have to feel like you need to earn every single XP at that point.
Oh, you earn it, or you're not playing right. Got my eye on you, Deanna.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of ways to do it.
Right.
Cool.
And another thing to mention on that is these acts are long. Like you notice that with the God Box, and it's the same with Fires of Ray. There's probably Raw. Jeez. God, one mispronunciation. All right. I've only been saying it that way for 45 years or whatever.
It's a hard habit to break.
Because the acts are longer and you're talking multiple nights between acts where you get XPs, that makes a difference, in terms of how fast you level up, and gain those new clearance items. And also, as people will notice, the farther you get up the tree, like it starts taking multiple, hits of XP to get anything done, because you've kind of maxed out your skills at the +5. You need perks to go beyond the +5, or you need to boost your stats, which is costing 20, 25 points at a time. Like there's a slowdown that happens when you get past a certain curve, and that's by design. So
yeah, those first few bonuses can come quickly, but
they do, but it takes more and more to get, more and more powerful as you go. And that's why, like, we kind of assume we assume you're topping out at 100 acts. Like that's where that's the war, like right around a little over 100 acts. And some people they're like really playing it, and they're going to get there way faster than we ever expected, because we're all terrible. Like we play not as often, maybe, like a game every 2 weeks is great, Oh, man, everyone else is like, no, we got 5 sessions a week. Oh God. All right, well, you're going to get ahead. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah. Sort of related to this, can you tell us more about the new Relics of Power and how it will blow up the war?
Okay, so the new Relics of Power is going to be a reimagining of the original. So if you're expecting just a conversion or a complete reboot, it's not going to be either of those things. When you play it, you will see the echoes from the original one. There will be some callbacks, but it's important that some of this be a surprise. Otherwise, it's just kind of boring, especially for those players who played it before. But as for how it blows up the status quo, the funny story is that in the Q&A, the previous one, Darrell mentioned that we were going to blow up the status quo, but it wasn't going to be Relics of Power that did it. It was in reference as a general kind of thing that, or maybe I mentioned, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The point is that the status quo was going to shift dramatically when we hit year 2. And
don't sell Relic short.
Yeah, well, I know, but then one of the fans posted a summary of the Q&A and misinterpreted that thing, saying that Relics of Power was going to do it. And at that point, I'm like, that's actually kind of a good idea. Hey, Darrell, why don't we do that? So,
I thought that was the plan all along. I mean,
so, well, I
Because
didn't
we're not
want this
gonna-
to necessarily be the big thing, but because that seemed a little presumptuous of me.
what Relics was in the old one, right?
Sure.
Like, it's got a big turning point at the end, and
Yeah.
it would not be a fair reimagining if we didn't have something similarly.
Oh, sure, and there was a plan for that. It just wasn't going to be the thing that gets everything to go. But what I realized is that Darrell and I have sort of discussed little bits on how things blow up at the start of year 2, and I realized that the 3 main instigators of the essentially the High Lord Civil War are going to be major antagonists in Relics of Power. And so things that the players will or can do in Relics of Power could act as the spark that finally gets basically it's Mobius, Kanawa, and Malro are the 3 that are sort of like getting really close to just, I am going to beat the crap out of you. And then finally something happens and they go, that's it, you're done. And then then it just blows up.
Oh yeah.
Was that the first time that the phrase High Lord Civil War had been uttered in one of our chats?
I wouldn't call it
Yeah.
Civil War.
Well, Civil Wars are never civil.
Yeah, right, but yeah.
Civil War
I'm
like
just saying.
implies a level of unity that was never there.
This is
I
true.
feel like I feel like that was the first time. All right, anyway, I'll just let that.
And this was one of the other things that I think people like caught on to that I'm really happy about is there's a painful. Here's the painful part of doing doing the heavy lean in on the cosms like we're doing now is it takes a while to get to year 2, and that's the one downside to it. But the upside is you really get to know these cosms, and I love that people are exploring that and like kind of getting into it. Like, oh right, it's pretty cool being able to do these and get the flavor of chocolate and the flavor of peanut butter very distinctly, so it means more when you do crash them together and stuff goes crazy.
Yeah, John Christopher. I mean, the thing is, even if the timing wise, we weren't able to get a T-shirt into the Kickstarter itself, doesn't mean that Mobius won't ever show up on a T-shirt.
Right.
That's a thing we can certainly push for if the fans want it. And
I want it.
I want it.
Look, I'm wearing Wrath and Glory because I got no Mobius T-shirt. Come on.
All right. So here's an interesting question. I like this one because it really has 2 extremely different answers.
Well, I'll take
So
one.
like many, I first came to Torg as a youngster, but now that I'm an old, I just like that. I am trying to spread the gospel of Targeternate and the joys of things like Nile Empire to younger players. How would you appeal to new players who've only ever heard of D&D or Powered by the Apocalypse games? Those are 2 very different poles to come from towards Targeternate. So who wants to take the first one?
I mean, it blows me away that there are young people who only know the Powered by the Apocalypse games, which would be...
Well, I mean, if you're listening to like the Adventure Zone, that's currently doing Monster of the Week, and
I mean,
so
I think it's
that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
So yeah. Brian Reeves says Targeternate could be appealing to players of Savage Worlds. That's kind of a no-brainer. There's so much shared DNA between those systems that I think it's a pretty easy sell.
Hey, Brian.
But yeah, let's talk about those 2. So like people coming from, I watch Critical Role and I want to know what's this thing Targeternate. What do I do?
So that's the $1 million marketing question, right? Like everybody has
Right.
like, how do I get my D&D player to play something other than D&D? And so far, no one has come up with a good answer to that, other than maybe Pathfinder. But so if you're coming from the D&D zone, right? Here's the nice thing about transitioning to Torg from D&D. We do use a D20. That is something comfortable and familiar. If you start an Isle, all the trappings are very similar. And the cool thing that you can do with that is you can go like, all right, we're going to start with a D&D party, except one of the members is a dude with a machine gun. And then you can just start like adding, and you've also got the option to play like a cyber ninja. What? And kind of go crazy from there. But it is kind of interesting. You can do like a regular party and keep it very, familiar in some ways while adding those elements of, wow, what is going on here? And then one of the elements that you do add to that is the drama deck and the narrative control that it offers. And that is kind of a segue into the exact opposite pole, which is the heavy storytelling games like Powered by the Apocalypse and all that, is, that the drama deck was, and is that early prototype, for getting more narrative control in the game. And in some ways it is comfortable for people, right? Because it gives you, the card gives you a lot of control. You're not put on the spot in terms of like, oh, I rolled this, now I've got to come up with something like now. It's more like, okay, I am choosing my moment to do this thing. Like I've got a card that tells me I can do it. I can choose my moment to do it, and I can negotiate what that looks like. And that makes it a pretty good gateway to people that might be more used to much more strict rule sets that have narrative elements to them.
Yeah. Deanna, do you have thoughts about PPTA? Otherwise, I can talk about it.
Yeah, just that. I mean, there's no question that Torg is a lot crunchier than a lot of story games. Like Cortex Prime is another one that I really like as a game, but it is still freeform, and I mean, I agree with Darrell that the drama deck does help in cutting down a little bit on analysis paralysis if that's a problem. So yeah, I don't really have much to add to that.
So the thing that I will say, so I ran I ran Targeternate on the One Shot podcast, and I talk a lot with James D'Amato, who's, he's very much a story gamer. He's super into the rules light stuff. And he had a blast playing Torg, even though it was definitely not his mechanical thing. And a lot of how I brought him in was talking about things like, yeah, if certain things happen, I'm going to hand you a new character sheet. And he was like, that's bananas. I love it. So that really got him in. So for the story gamers, I think running the day ones is a really compelling story draw. Cause it's like, here's some simple pre-gens and suddenly things are changing. And, it really shows you the appeal of, because the thing about story games is they're very used to extremely setting weak games. Like, we're going to make up our setting at the table and as we play. And I think day one really shows the appeal of a strong setting like Targeternate. And it really brings people into some of the bonkers stuff that happens in Torg. So that was, I think, my journey.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Hey, I see Ulysses Spiel is in the chat. Who's running that? Is that Marcus or Michael or?
No,
that's me.
Oh,
that's literally me.
Well, damn it! I thought we had.
Well, I mean, that's because the chat runs through Kickstarter.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
I am logged in as us, as the company. So yeah, no, it's just me. It's just me.
Disappointed.
But yeah, so yeah, there were some questions about Free RPG Day, and I was saying, well, we're probably doing Fading Suns this year.
The last I heard.
We can get it ready,
Yeah.
and then I would imagine Hexen 1733 might be next year.
That seems likely. Well, there might also be a secret project that bumps.
Yeah,
that bumps Hexen to the side, like out of the way. Hexen.
Of the things that we know about, Hexen seems likely.
I'm not a little bit more.
But okay. Yeah, certainly the bling as Rob said,
that's a great
is a good draw for players. It's like, wow, this is a pretty game with lots of trinkets.
Well, and tactile matters, right? Like and this is something as an in an education background, there's different kinds of learning, and there's and in role playing games, there's different types of games appeal to the different kinds of learning and senses. And that's something that's why we felt so strongly about the acrylic tokens. Like, oh man, for tactile, like it matters. Like the weight of the heavier possibility chips and stuff like that. It's like, man, this stuff means something, and I tend personally to eschew that. I'm super visual and the rest of it's like, whatever. But man, it does. It makes a big difference. So that's a great point, and one that I would usually gloss over.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving down. Two-parter. I'll read the first part, and then I'll read the second part, though I won't be able to re-show the second part. Jay Rutley asks, the Infiniverse Exchange is a great tool for providing extra content to the game. I just have a couple of questions regarding its function now that some time has passed. Number one, the Exchange was promoted during the original Kickstarter, but doesn't seem to have been mentioned much to the wider public since then, leaving it to feel like it's only reaching a limited audience. Are there any plans to do some more promotions during Kickstarters, or perhaps even having an ad page, note somewhere in the new source books coming out, or some other genius thing that we can think of? So yeah, let's talk about how we will continue to push the Infiniverse Exchange moving forward. Deanna, do you want to talk about sort of how the community is on the forums and elsewhere?
Well, I do know that there is an active group of people who are posting stuff to the Infiniverse, and they do discuss it in a section of our forums.
And we love you.
Yes. And one of the great things about the Infiniverse is that it allows products to appear and be developed that we just don't have the time to do. Like a lot of adventures, theoretically we could put out lots, but we don't have the resources to do it. And so there's some pretty good adventure writers out there putting stuff on the Infiniverse. So yeah.
And what I love about it too is there's a mixture of super fans, but also professionals, right? Because we'll get pitches sometimes like, oh, I want to do this, and I'm like, all right, we've got this plan for and it's going to be ages before something like that would fit, but there's a spot you can go to do that. And that was one of the reasons, and this might not be great promotion. I'm not a marketing guy, but that was one of the reasons why we had Greg on our first one. Because, the guy, he's, one of the giants of Torg, but also he's doing stuff in Infiniverse. And we wanted to be like, hey, here's a reminder, like there's a lot of people still doing stuff beyond this. Beyond that, there's more we could be doing, and that's a good kind of shout out. Like that's a reminder to us. I tend to get really focused on like, oh man, I got to make these dates and push things out, and it's very easy for stuff to go outside my peripheral vision. So that's a good reminder. Like, hey, that's an important thing. More focus. Good call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I think I can re-show the question. Part two, with the release of the Living Land content and now Nile Empire with all new art assets, are there any plans on releasing more Torg art to be allowed to be used by Infiniverse authors?
Yes. We intend to do extra art packs, and it's just a matter of when we've got time to do it. And asking helps. Like if no one says anything, we're like, all right, I guess it's good. We'll just keep going. But the more people are like, hey, more art assets, okay, great. We'll put that together.
Yeah, poke Deanna on the forums and say,
yeah.
Hey,
and the
Living Land's been up for a while.
Well, yeah. The best thing is like focused requests. Like, hey, how about a Living Land specific one? Now we got this new art for that. Or hey, how about like a character pack? Because like I find characters to be the most universally useful art because you can put them on a page and wrap text around them, or you can like add them to cover. I mean, they're great. So like if I were designing on my own, that's what I would ask for is characters. Like give me them characters.
Yep. Okay. So John Christopher is asking, what about doing comics for Infiniverse? I need to double check the legal on the statement on that. Look at the agreement that comes with the Infiniverse exchange. I think that's like it's allowed to do that. If you post it there, the key is any media you make has to be posted there. But I believe that's okay.
Yeah, unless there's some other permission, because I know there was the cool Japanese "What is Torg" comic.
Yeah, the doujinshi.
I don't think that's on Infiniverse Exchange, but
because that's doujinshi sort of exist in a very specifically Japanese legal space. And
it's so cool. Like we should get a copy of that and put it there so people.
And I really want that. Yeah, we need to ask our
putting a note. Forgot about that.
Our Delphi Council member, if when he comes back to Gen Con this year, can he bring some copies for us?
We've actually got a couple connections now too.
There is a Flash. There is a Japanese doujinshi of how to play Torg. And it is glorious. Good. Like we've only seen like a couple page images, but it's glorious.
Yeah, I can't understand the thing in it, but it looks awesome.
Flash look, man, I would have to scrounge because it's if you go back just follow the hashtag Targeternate on Twitter, like way back many months ago. Man,
yeah, I don't think that's gonna help, man.
You're gonna have to do some scrounging on Twitter. But that's how I would have to find it.
I've got a note to look into that to get that shared out as much as we can. Like it'll be a while. That's not a high priority, but
right. We'll see if we can scrounge that up. Okay.
I got an answer for John. He's asking about more near now news. I haven't been as regular on that as I would like to be, and a large part of that is that my day job this last 2 weeks has been hell, and I basically am finishing off my work shift and just not wanting to have anything to do with the computer. So
and then there's the Darrell guy like, hey Deanna, where's this? Hey, where's that?
Yeah.
So, how about your edits? Let's go. Chop chop. Time marches forward.
He's such a slave driver.
I'm the worst.
So yeah, I mean I'll go after this, I'll go post a couple more days. I mean, you will see the entire thing by the end of the Kickstarter. We're a little over halfway down, I think, at this point.
Cool. All right. I think we can. We got a fair number of more questions, but a lot of these we can talk about fairly quickly. I'll save the kind of Kickstarter theory stuff for the end, so people can, if they're bored by that kind of talk. All right. So Mark Hope asked, Yeah, there was some talk about Torgeternity fiction beyond what we've seen so far. What are your general plans for that?
So this is one of the few areas that I can't give huge spoilers for. What I can say is that we have a name that is recognizable outside of the Torg space and more in the, best-selling author space, who is working on Torg novels. And when we have more to announce for that, we will. While that's happening, we're filling the fiction space with other stuff. Like I said, right now, we've got I think Dragons Over England hasn't been actually available for quite some time. We're fixing that up. That's going to fill a similar niche to our Tales of Cairo this time. The Cracking Tales of the Nile Empire. It's going to fill the similar niche of that. So.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question that came in just now. Dave Haynes is not able to post questions on his phone, so he threw it through Facebook. So he asks, once all the Cosm books are printed, can we get a book collecting all the backer archetypes?
Yes. What the plan is, it's not even going to take that long. So what's going to be an item coming up pretty soon when we've got, and it's all archetype pages, right? And it'll be like almost like what you're seeing now, with the difference being that these will be, they'll be sort of named or whatever. But we'll have all the archetypes from all the GM screens and the backers, and it'll probably be a multi-volume tome. And as we get them up, we're just be like, okay, have a bunch of characters, everybody, because we think that'd be cool. We want to get those in people's hands.
That's kind of our character collection.
Yeah. All right. So next question. I'm just looking for I'm getting down to mostly stretch goal stuff. We talked about this one in the last chat. Will there be gizmo creation rules like OTORG but better? So Matthew, make sure to go watch the previous chat. We did talk a little bit about this previously. Was there anything else either of you wanted to say about those?
Not really. The answer is no, but
it was very important to us that we stay to the systems that we established in the first book and not, have that mechanical explosion, which I know that some people love, but that's not the identity of Torgeternity. So,
yeah, but the thing is that you can make gizmos. That is still a thing. We just do it differently than the way we did it before.
So in a way, that's kind of yes, but better.
Yeah. Well,
flavor to taste, right?
This is a total side trek, but I'm one of the ones who defend the Marvel heroic role playing character generation, and that so many people complained that it didn't have one, and I was one of the ones who was going, but I use it all the time for actually making the characters, and it just is a lot more freeform than a lot of people would like.
And you can get some very interesting results, like the Amazing High Chair Man.
Yes.
The here's a fun one. Mark Hope, will there be a RoboSphinx?
Yes.
Dude, RoboSphinx is statted in Cracking Tales of the Nile Empire. That was one of the cool, that was the thing that I was super excited, for when we were talking about things we could do to spice up and add goals. Was, we know we want to do this fiction and we've got these cool stories. And then we're like, what we could do, to put this over the top is add the game stats to some of the weird stuff in them. And the RoboSphinx is one of my favorites because it's reality rockets.
Yeah, it's there is something that happens in the story that I had to figure out I had to figure out a way to actually make it fit with what we had, and
Right.
I think
Yeah,
we did it.
So funny because Deanna's like, transformation doesn't work that way, and I'm like, it is when you're shot in the face with a reality rocket. Oh man, okay. This is kind of a special circumstance.
John Christopher asked me a question about technically Living Land stuff, but it's very current, and I want to go ahead and answer this right now for everybody because I'm sure many of the people watching are curious. So just so you know, the Living Land drama deck is happening. It was already sent out to Europe, and the other shipments to the other distribution centers are on their way. There may be some, like, I didn't catch some of the address changes in time, so if you sent me address changes and I said yes, I will make sure of that, I didn't make sure of it in necessarily every case for Europe because they didn't tell me that they were in. So they just happened. It just went out, and so there we go. As far as all the other replacement items and then those, I'm going to be sending out updates this over the weekend for both Living Land and Wrath and Glory, for those of you who are interested in that. We have all of our stock inventoried at our North American warehouse, so I'm going to start...
Do you have that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be collecting replacement requests. I'm going to let people know, hey, now's the time. Send in your replacement requests if you haven't already, and that's for damage or missing.
I've got a couple to send you too for authors that were the
Now the nice thing is I'll be collecting those requests over the next week because our warehouse will not be open. So that's just to be aware. That's the North American warehouse is in Tennessee. It's Studio 2. So it's Eastern Tennessee. But yeah, so that they'll be off for the holidays. So after the new year, I will send the full list, and those will start going out. And we handle all replacements worldwide because it's individual items, so we don't send them to distribution centers and then out. That's just overly complicated for individual replacements. But yeah, I'll be sending updates out about that. But since the question came up, I wanted to let everybody know, yes, it's happening. It'll be there. Okay. Now we're getting into sort of the Kickstarter stuff.
Boring.
Some of it's very relevant now to this Kickstarter.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are interested.
So Count Thalem asks, will there be any more physical items to go into the sarcophagus, or is this effectively maxed out?
195 is the last of the physical items. There are,
but that's an add-on.
Or yeah, right. Oh yeah. Let me think if there's
things going into the sarcophagus.
So we could get. It's a little later on. There was an unlock for some more threat cards. That's the only thing. It wouldn't change. I mean, it changes the value of the sarcophagus, but it doesn't change your pledge or anything like that. So that's the only thing I can think of upcoming.
Yeah. So.
And yes, we're definitely doing the Christmas Eve.
Yeah, we will do a Christmas Eve countdown chat. Deanna, I don't know if you're there, but Darrell and I are
2 p.m. I think.
Yeah, we're both boring about it. So.
I think I will be able to make it. That's after my shift ends.
Cool. Right, but then if you want to actually spend Christmas Eve with your family, we understand.
Yeah, feel free.
Well, it's Pacific. I'm on the Pacific time, so it's not quite there yet.
So yeah, we'll be here.
2 p.m. Pacific, John.
Yeah, so I'll get more notice about that because I won't post that probably until tomorrow. I'll schedule it, so you'll see the actual time then. And it'll be like the last hour leading up to the close is what we'll do.
And probably into the close. We'll send the links out, and I'll stick around for a little while to chat with people about it.
So yeah, 2 a.m. in Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, we often it's like 3 a.m. right now in Japan, so I don't think we've seen any of our Japanese backers.
I'd do it.
That's why we had it in the evening previously, is because it was better for them.
Yeah.
Okay. John Christopher asks, any chance of hearing hints of unrevealed stretch goals? What is the current time frame for Pledge Manager and surveys? So the first part of that we kind of already talked about. Any others you want to mention?
Yeah,
Darrell?
I think that, let's see. The ones that you could expect in the higher reaches of the 200s are a lot of the digital cards that we usually do. And you guys, just if they don't unlock, it's not that we'll never do those. It's just they won't be a priority. Like when they're unlocked as a stretch goal, it's like, okay, we're going to put the resources. And like, I can't say I'm done with the Nile Empire until those are done. If they don't unlock, okay, cool. Like I'll still probably get around to them, but I won't be pushing hard to do it. There's the digital cards. There was the Wuhan vote. There was the coolest one that I think, and we'll talk about stretch goal theory and all that and why if we don't reach it, I'm bummed. But it's a new kind of threat card that we'd add to the set for the vehicles, which I think would be really cool. So we've got like the 30 like actual bad guys in this one, and then like a new format of card. So if you're running a chase with motorcycles and cars and all that, you've got the vehicles there for the heroes to have the stats of. I think that would be really cool. I can't remember where that one is, and we might get it. It might be 210 or 215. So you never know. And again, doesn't mean we'll never do it. It's just not the priority for this one.
Yeah. Flash, as far as converting digital cards to physical card packs, the ideal is that they become a product, but if they don't, one of the things that's sort of on the back burner, but we're still poking at is exploring doing more with POD through drive-through cards. So if we can print on demand some of those things, that would be useful because there's not all of the we don't have to do as much for it as far as distribution, and it's great for people if it's only a few people really need this physically. It has kind of a lower level of demand, but there is still some.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the problem too, just so people know, we've actually submitted cards to print on demand several times, but there's always some little problem with the formatting that we've got.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to work out. Like that's the reason is because we have to get that process right.
So people are like, what about print on demand? I'm like, didn't we do that? And it's like, oh yeah, we had a problem and the file came back. It's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll redo that. Whoops, so.
Yeah. There's an interesting story question. Jim Groves asks, I've read that the devs think Dr. Mobius is the most dangerous High Lord, except for the Gaunt Man. Why is that, if that is actually true?
So, personally, I always thought, and this is a personal thing, right? In my own storytelling brain, Mobius is that awesome crossroads of he's got a plan, right? Like he's a schemer, and he can do his own dirty work, like he's a supervillain, but he's also that like Machiavellian manipulating 2 steps ahead type thing. And he's like Dr. Doom, right? Like he's got super science, he's got magic, he's got his own religion, which basically he's a deity within. He's got it all, and he's evil. And the fact that he comes from a world where good guys can't win and has done so much, it's like, oh man, Like I always felt like he's shackled by his own home realm, and if he could break those shackles, he would be Torg. That's me.
The realm that the bad guys can't win.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the only thing I'd add to that is that just empirically, he invaded successfully 9 realms, 9 cosms in 30 years, and nobody even came close to doing that else.
Barakaz done.
He's a go-getter.
Yeah, exactly. He's ambitious, right? Yeah, and he's got a lot of very strong personalities, like nipping at his heels that he's got to manage. You know, like as much as we give Wuhan crap, Wuhan's nearly that strong, and you know, Mobius has to deal with that. I think he's great.
All right. All right. Here's we're getting into more of Kickstarter planning kind of questions, kind of looking at the future.
Sucking at Anderson's comment. The Wuhan clan ain't nothing to mess with. Love it.
You had to consider program for the next source book. What schedule and deadline would you propose? Will we get a new Kickstarter every 3 months, 6 months? What are the next Cosmos plans? So
God, not 3 months.
So not 3 months, but also not 6 months. So the general plan is
4 months between is exactly what we're aiming for. And this is why we've been careful this time not to say, like last time we felt very strongly we would not do this Kickstarter until the previous one shipped. This one, we've been careful not to say that because, and I actually think we are going to ship before that new Kickstarter. Like, knock on wood, I think that's going to happen.
So just to clarify, it's 4 months between the end of one and the beginning of another.
Yeah, that's the plan. And we might even accelerate beyond that. I actually think physically we could barely do it, but the biggest concerns are we need to keep our quality up. If we go too fast, that won't happen. So we're going to do it as fast as we can without the product suffering. And then the other thing is you guys, right? Like, because I know people want this stuff, but I think that a Kickstarter every couple months would be completely exhausting. I mean, not just for us, but for...
Well, financially, too.
Exactly, because we're going for these bigger boxes and stuff. Like, I think that would just kill people. So... We're experimenting. Like this one was longer between than we wanted it to be. Like we're aiming for 4 months. And we might do one and do like the 4 months thing and it doesn't work. And then we'll pad it back out. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's the hope.
Yep. So yeah, that's and then the next one is Isle.
Flash says, "Be careful with estimates." Like, oh, there's an asterisk on all of this. You know, like, yep, I've been wrong every single time. So,
well, I mean, the last one it was because we did something too early, and
Prenton, man. Yeah, Prenton.
So just in terms of order, we know that the next Kickstarter will be Isle.
Yes. After that is Cyber Papacy.
After that is Cyber Papacy.
After that is Darkhold. That's a change from last time I said it. We moved Darkhold up. Okay. Then
instead of
and then Orochi for the finale. The year 1 finale is horror. Oh, and while we're on that, like, so people have been kind of like, wow, what's the deal with all these reality trees showing up and all this? It's like, yeah, what is the deal with all that? It's almost like we're going somewhere with it. If you guys are sick of reality trees, sorry.
Nightmare trees.
Yeah, nightmare trees. About. Yeah, nightmare trees. Well, spoiler alert.
Nightmare is.
I mean, spoiler that same root. Yeah. Same root. That's a pun.
Can we get a reality tree themed Kickstarter as a shelf to hold all the boxes?
So we joke. Our next April Fool's one is going to be the Torg bookshelf. And who knows if response is strong enough? Like the last April Fool's joke, it might become a real thing.
Yep. Okay. Pascal has a couple questions. First of all, currently most of the content for Torg is funded by Kickstarter. Will UNA ever release products in a more standard way without patron funding, such as regular pre-orders like the Wrath and Glory line? So the first thing I have to say, the pre-orders for Wrath and Glory is literally because we couldn't kickstart. So we were not allowed to kickstart Wrath and Glory.
Yeah.
By licensing.
Yeah.
So,
but that also makes sense for a product like Warhammer, right?
Yeah. So even in Wrath and Glory, we would be kickstarting it if we could. It is kind of our mode. Right. Now the answer is, I would say, like, maybe for other media that have, that are built for different marketing strategies. Currently, and I say currently because I see the winds changing, and there's, like, towards the end of this year, things got better for RPG Kickstarters, but they were not looking great earlier in the year for RPG Kickstarters in general across the industry. And there were a few here at the end that kind of brought that back and made me say, okay, maybe it's not dead yet. But definitely, and we'll get to more of this in Kickstarter theory, but Kickstarter is constantly changing, and the interaction of the community with Kickstarters is constantly changing overall, but definitely in the RPG industry. So for the future, it's hard to predict exactly for the distant future, but for the near future, yeah.
Yeah, and what it comes down to is what we're looking for is our audience, right? Mm-hmm. If we're getting tons of pre-orders from game stores, then okay, that's where our audience is. But that hasn't been true for anybody but Dungeons and Dragons in a long time. And why so many game companies come to Kickstarter is because here is where the people are. And we can reach out to them directly. They can tell us this is what we want. This is what we'll buy, and that's great on our side, and it allows certain projects that probably wouldn't be able to happen otherwise to happen. And Torg might have fallen into that, right? Like when we kickstarted it the first time, you see out there some like different game properties that get brought back, and some of them are a 7th sea, like they go crazy. Some of them are not, and you don't know which it's going to be. So we would have never been able to invest the kind of resources that we have into Torg if it hadn't been as successful as it was in that first Kickstarter. So, and that's the power of it. Then that's why it's so enticing to us. Like, we can find people who want to buy our games. Yes, please.
Yeah. And, and a lot of that, to some extent, it's also on us. It's the challenge is that to some extent we have, very high production values for everything we do. But that doesn't always show on Kickstarter. So sometimes people need to see a thing in person before they jump on it, but also Kickstarter allows us to do the big box,
right?
And that's not something we can do for retail,
right?
With retail, you've got to have a marketing strategy, a production strategy where you're trying to sell every book individually, and that can be rough. Retail,
and other people are noting, like, the problem with Kickstarter is you can get burned. And that was why it was important for us to not do a new Kickstarter until we delivered on the previous one, to establish that trust. It's like, okay, there's different ways to do a Kickstarter. And one is what it was meant for, which is we don't even know. We're throwing this out there, and maybe it funds and maybe it doesn't. And if it does, we're going to go do this thing and do all the development. And that's super risky. And that's cool. Like, that's venture capital. That's what it's for. But then there's a lot of other people, and Pinnacle does this, and we do this, and a lot of game companies do this, where it's like, hey, really, we're fine. This is a product we're going to do in some fashion, no matter what, and we know what we're doing. We're just reaching out to see, can we find that audience? Are they out there?
Right.
And the best place to find them is here. Like in Germany, they don't do Kickstarter. They've got their own their own pre-order and crowdfunding system set up through their own website. I don't think we're ready for that in America.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, right now the industry wouldn't support it. There are a couple of companies that have tried it on the English language side, and it has not worked. People expect Kickstarter, even GoFundMe, for instance, looks illegitimate to customers. So that's a very important thing.
Even on a successful product, you want to know what your potential peak market is. You don't want to have a situation where you print 10,000 copies of a 300 plus page hardback, and then sell out of them really quickly, and then go, okay, well, let's do another 10,000 to find out your actual demand was 11,000. And because then you're just screwed. You have 9,000 books you're not selling.
Yeah, and Rob mentions like, hey, the bridge for that is store demos, and that's absolutely true. It's there's a lot of moving pieces in something like that, though. It's
yes, and my big thing is, which I mentioned, is we're a remote team spread out across the continent. From Atlanta to Kamloops, and
I bet 1 out of the 47 people here might know where that is.
And Rob's point is like that's what the fans can bring to us, and we're like absolutely and one of the things that we're working on trying to figure out is how to better incentivize that. Here's a thank you for spreading the game, and. There's some cool stuff that's brewing under the surface. There's a group in California called Torganized Play that are kind of trying to get their own thing going, and I mean we think it's awesome. We're like, okay, that's great. We don't have the effort to throw at that, but if you do, we want to support it, and then it's just a matter of figuring out how that comes together.
Okay. So the last 2 questions, I'm going to warn everyone, are just going to be us talking about Kickstarter and stretch goal theory.
Yeah. And some practical, as it relates to this one. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, so if you do leave, we understand. Thank you for coming.
Wait, okay, so before we do that, then I want to show. This came in the mail the other day. It's the dice tray. Oh. It's so gorgeous. But so the people that don't understand from the picture, so it's got these snaps on the diagonal corners, and so this is how you carry it. And then you unsnap that, and then snap them the other way. It's such a cool design, I think. And then that makes the dice rolling tray itself. So, all rolled up, the people that do these, they're great. That's Phil and her folks. And I was super excited that people reacted positively when we showed this off. And there's more stuff like this in the pipeline. So, but I wanted to show my tray off because it's so cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, very cool. All right, you ready for this?
Let's get into it. Let's get business on this.
Alrighty. Okay, so this first one from Pascal is a little more specific. This is Pascal's second question here. Seeing how each following Kickstarter may see lower and lower maximum pledge thresholds, do you think a refocus of the stretch goals will be needed in the future? For example, by focusing first on major components like the card booster Delphi missions in hardback and print and Relics of Power Redux, and later on goals like maps, creatures, cards, acrylic tokens, etc. So sort of 2 parts to this question. The first one is, yes, we expect that in general, because this is the habit with most product lines, you're going to see things either kind of be about the same or kind of go down over time when you're doing basically supplement Kickstarters, that's going to be the case, and you'd have to do something big, like even Numenera 2, which was kind of a redo of Numenera, definitely did not do. It did well because it's Monty Cook, but it didn't do anywhere near the Numenera or even the Strange, or not the Strange, Cipher System, which was the generic system. So yeah, we understand that, and we're kind of constantly looking at trends and expectations, and this is a big part of when we're designing the Kickstarter. We make a lot of assumptions and projections about where do we think this will end up, and if it doesn't end up there, what does that mean, and where where do we have to go to do that?
Right, and because there's
you can talk about that.
Yeah, well, so and there's two axes on a stretch goal, right? Like, one is what you want them to do is generate excitement during the campaign. Like, that's one of only two purposes for them. Is the reason you have them is, hey, here's something we can announce during the campaign that is interesting, that keeps people involved. And the more people are involved in the campaign, the more interesting it is overall, and the more attention we're likely to get. So otherwise, we would just, okay, here's everything, forget stretch goals. This is stupid. The other axis on a stretch goal is part of what you can do is based on the audience that you garner. So you set certain things as like, all right, well, if we've got 1,000 people buying in at a certain level, then our base is strong enough, we can do stuff like these crazy acrylic tokens. Or maybe 1 pack is cool, 2 might be too much, but if we've got a certain amount of attention in business, great, we can do the second pack. And in a well-done Kickstarter, those cross over nicely so that, it's very natural. And it's like, oh, cool, we unlocked this. And now we've got this, and people are excited, and it feeds on itself and becomes very big. And it can go very badly in one of two ways. One, where you stall. Like, we kind of stalled on this one, which was a surprise. But that's probably, there's a lot of reasons that can happen. Time of year, where it's like, oh, man, we went, we had the best first week, that we could possibly have hoped for. It blew Living out of the water week 1, but every Kickstarter has a saggy middle, but this one was super saggy. So we got this grind for 2 weeks. We're like, oh my God, nothing is unlocking. And that's frustrating for people. And that has the opposite of the intended effect. So they're drawing board on that one,
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this when I get into the big picture concept. So, the thing about the saggy middle that I want to be clear on is that part of the problem is that it looks saggier than it is. Like the Living Lands middle, we had actually a surprisingly good
really
second.
Yeah,
we had a good second week. Our third week into the beginning of the fourth week was really dirt
ghost town.
It was, and that is so typical. And I want everyone to understand that that's absolutely what we expect for a Kickstarter. It's completely normal. So the thing that we run into, now the thing, and Michael Lowenall's like, I can't believe that the Nile Empire didn't do more than the Living Land. We are not done.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
Right.
So let's be very clear. We're at 175, 176 now, which the Living Land did not hit until its later push, and the Living Land had a weird late push where it sloped up fairly steadily for the last 5 days. Usually it's more of a steep climb.
It's nothing, and then 2 days and it shoots up.
Yeah, that's so. So the Living Lands arc was a little unusual in that we had a good second week and we had a more gradual final push. That didn't really spike in the last 2 days. It just kind of gradually built over the last 5.
Yeah.
All of this, so all of this makes it very weird,
right? And there's like trends, but there's also like we're right on top of Christmas. So God knows what's going to happen. We don't know. Like we fingers crossed. We think we'll have that spike because traditionally Kickstarters do. We might not.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because we are literally our 48-hour reminder goes out the Saturday before Christmas. We have no idea what that's going to do. Like so to be clear, to a little bit of industry insider stuff. For prior to really last year and finally getting into this year, no one would kickstart in December.
Yeah, December and January were no-fly zones.
That is not a thing you do. The problem is that the year is getting so crowded that everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you should kickstart in March." Yeah, everybody's kickstarting in March. So you can't stick out if you're kickstarting in March anymore. That's just not viable. That there's no way that you can say, oh yeah, we're going to kickstart in March because that's the good month. No, it isn't. Not anymore. You got to go where other people aren't. So this year, we and a couple other people really were starting to try to push that threshold later, and other people are starting to push the beginning of year threshold earlier, and so that's those are the kinds of things that we're looking at, and so really the Nile Empire has been a bit of an experiment and will continue to be. We'll see how the last couple of days go. And if it doesn't,
and if we'd had our druthers, we wouldn't be this late in the year. But that was what production ended up pushing us to, and we didn't want to wait another 2 months. We didn't think you guys wanted to wait another 2 months either. So,
yeah, and definitely Hogfather. Make sure you ask the Hogfather.
Yeah, good shout out.
So part of this that we do have to consider is the timing. So we had, as Darrell said, we had that great opening that made us very happy. And I'm not worried about the last couple of days. I know that we will have last push. So there's the drive-through RPG customer email is usually a big nudge. So the second one of those is in their hands, and they'll process that hopefully today or tomorrow. And then the 48-hour reminder goes out to anyone who set it in Kickstarter. So that's still going to have an impact. How much of an impact we will see, but I know that people are worried about will we get the hardcover Delphi missions? Oh yeah, we're going to get the hardcover Delphi missions. That I'm not worried about at all.
And one of the biggest questions that people ask, and I just saw it in the window too, is like, oh man, if we don't get certain things, are we going to open it up to the game on? And it kind of depends on the things, right? Like we want to keep it simple. So if we had 200K, cool. We'll call it there. And again, if we would have unlocked certain things, I would probably push them up on my priority because they would be web things that would go out anyway. The answer is yes. Some of the more complicated things, I don't really want to do that. That's part of that other access of the stretch goal of are the people there? Okay, great. Yes, this is worth the expense to do. If they're not, don't push it, because that's how you kill a company, right? Is you can be too successful with your stretch goals and just drive yourself into the ground, and not on my watch.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why you'll notice we don't kickstart an entire product line.
It's a disastrous success.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how the next couple of days go, and we'll take the lessons from this, however it ends up. As far as the game on thing, luckily that's something we don't have to decide right away. So someone had asked about the timing for the game on pledge management. It'll be mid to late January is when it'll open, because nobody's going to be around next week, and I will start designing it at the beginning of January. So that's, and then, and I have to process it through the Game on Tabletop folks, so they have to be around. So I don't know what their schedules are for January, but they certainly aren't going to be around over the holidays, because they're in France and everybody gets those off. But yeah, so that's, just to be clear, that timing is going to be mid to late January.
Right.
But that's why we want to get you the PDFs right away, so that you can be starting to enjoy them.
And feel like you get some bang for your buck. It's Christmas. Yep. Get that out as soon as we can, and then by the time we got the game on going, we'll have any crowd edits in. We'll be going to print right after Game On closes. So
the Hogfather will deliver. Pay no attention to the fact that he's speaking in all caps, which is a deep, deep cut, but I had to throw it out there. So yeah. The last one. So let's talk about my stretch goal theory. So we've talked about this a little bit, and I did kind of comment on it. So stretch goals, they're very psychological, but they're also a tool of communication. And they're psychological in both directions, and they're a tool of communication in both directions. This is very important. So they're one of the ways that that we, as a creator, that we maintain a back and forth stream. So let's talk about the problems first. So there are kind of three ways that you can address stretch goals. Two of them have their pluses and minuses, and one of them I've never seen done, and it's although I've seen kind of variants done, and because it's ridiculous. But the first two are, you can either have stretch goals that are very far apart, but they're big things. Like, when we reach this stretch goal, we're adding this entire book, and you can see it coming forever. We're staring at it for several days, and we're trying to get there, and we're trying to get there. That we're trying to hype up this thing, and we're talking about this thing, and aiming for that stretch goal. And so you have a few high value but very far apart stretch goals. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, which has tended to be the Ulysses pattern, is to have a lot of little goals that build up to those big things. And in those little goals, one of the reasons to compare those two. So part of the problem with the little goals is that people complain about the individual goals. That you're like, well, that's just a little goal. That goal means nothing to me. Like, if you see a poster, but you're not into posters, you're like, this is nothing. Why are we wasting a stretch goal on this? And the answer is because we want to keep things going, and we want to have a lot of them, so that, okay, you don't like that, but here's the next thing, and that's something else that you like. So we show you a bunch of different things, and we try to preview several at a time, so you can say, okay, this next stretch goal doesn't mean anything to me personally, but the one after that I'm really into, and I want to see that happen.
And that reminds me, posters are in that back 200 plus. I forgot about those.
So that is something that would go into the sarcophagus. Yeah. But yeah. So, and we might do anyway, we'll see. But that's may not be our decision. But then the advantage of the big stretch goals, the large with a lot of space behind them, is that you can see, okay, I see the value of that thing. It's a bit away, and it's going to take us a while to get there, but that is a clearly valuable stretch goal that definitely is worth waiting for. Unless that's the one thing that you're not interested in. And that's one of the problems with the far apart stretch goals. You're like, okay, that's a very high value stretch goal that I personally don't care about, and I have no idea if we're ever going to get to the thing that I care about. So I'm gonna bail on this Kickstarter. So that's there's a lot of issues with both of those, but sort of ultimately we've kind of decided that the bunch of little goals is slightly better because of the fact that it gives people more things to see. There's a little more happening, so we have a little more to talk about. But then we get to the problem of spacing. And this is where the third mode comes in. The third mode is, I've got a list of stretch goals, and every day I'm going to tell you, here's when this stretch goal gets unlocked, and it's a target we're likely to hit the following day. Now, the problem with that is that starts to look ridiculous over time, because the first day, right, the first day you're like, okay, it's going to be $20,000 to the next stretch goal. And then on day 15, you're like, okay, it's going to be $500 to the next stretch goal. and I've never seen anybody do that because it looks ridiculous. Right. But on the other hand, the closest that they came to, actually the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition kind of leaned towards this kind of stretch goal, where it was pretty clear that they were basing a lot of their stretch goal levels on how the campaign was moving. Yeah. And that's easier if you have an initial plan where, okay, we're going to go every 3,000. Oh man, we're making a lot more money, because they did. They made a lot more money than they thought. Okay, we're going to not go every 3,000. We're going to have to wait and see. We'll space them out more. Right. That can work for that. And you can react in that way. It's much, much harder to go the other way, to say, all right, we're going to space about every 3,000. Okay, no, we've got to go to every 500. That looks a little weird. Yeah. Now, I did do, way back when we did the Aventuria card game Kickstarter, we were kind of struggling in the middle. So I did what were called squeeze goals. And they were not based on the amount. They were based on other social media things and shares and things like that. And we played this whole kind of raffle, essentially, with them. And it was super cool. It worked out actually pretty well. So that is a thing that we can do. But all of the problem is really that, in all of these theories, no one is ever going to be perfect. You're never going to perfectly satisfy everyone, because ultimately, when you're doing the bunch of little ones, someone is going to say, well, I want every single stretch goal to have high value. Yeah. And you just can't. And if you do the spaced apart, someone is going to say, I want to be seeing something happening every day. Yeah. And you just can't.
But anyhow, but we can narrow in on that. I mean, that's like, we were already like, with every Kickstarter, we get another tool in our toolbox, essentially, to be able to modify that, So, and again, we made certain things that we committed to on this one after the first week was so good, and then it's like, oh well, we kind of can't change that now.
Right. And we can react a little bit, and and that's one of the reasons we don't show you the whole stretch goal list right away. Like over the next 2 days, Darrell and I could say, if we wanted, okay, here's our final list, but we're going to compress a bunch of things.
Right.
So instead of showing you these 2 stretch goals, we're going to put those into one and say, well, they happen at this level, which we know we're going to hit.
Right.
We could do that, or we might decide to unlock things in Game On.
Right.
As we're designing that next month.
And all of those choices come to the cost versus effectiveness axis of that, right, where we go. And this is why the other reason we don't necessarily share them is because then people are sad if it doesn't happen. But it's like, well, but it would kill us if we did this. So we're not even going to put it out there. I see a lot of comments on there. I got to mention this on a Mobius costume. So I actually came this close to buying one at the Halloween store this year, but I'm like, okay, but if I do buy it, then I will have to dress up, on the last day. And it's not that I've got dignity, because I don't, but I didn't think that would be a good idea on multiple levels. I will say there are blackmail photos out there of me in a Mobius outfit in Vegas. Ask Shane Hensley about them. It's not good.
We're always sort of, the conclusion is we're always learning, and a lot of the questions about, well, why don't you just do this? Trust me, we've thought about it. It doesn't necessarily fix everything. There are definitely some things that are better than others, but that doesn't mean we can't do those others if that tends to be what the customers want, what you guys want. If you're like, yeah, but this is really what we want, even though that this other one works better, we'll do it.
Yeah. And hopefully that's clear based on like the differences between this one and last one. We are like very intently listening to what catches on with people and what doesn't. And it doesn't mean we won't do something, but we will move the priorities on them based on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just so you know, we've mentioned this before, we're trying to do something new with every Kickstarter. So like the dice tray was this one.
Wait, he's the next one.
And so, every Kickstarter is going to be a little different. And as we add those new things in, we can sort of revise what we've seen so far. So, so that's what I have on that. It's not everything, but if you want more detail on how to run a Kickstarter, you got to pay me a consulting fee.
Or find us at Gen Con drinking beer. Like that's the other place.
And the thing is, if you find me at Gen Con, I'm working too much. Origins might be a little easier to find some time, and some of the local cons that I attend in a variety of places. That's where to get me talking about industry stuff. But yeah. And finally, what can you say about making Isle more exciting for the future?
So the Isle was, when we went into it, Isle was our biggest challenge. Right? And some people love Isle. Some people do. I'd never really caught my imagination, when I was playing the original Torg. I didn't love it. And so we were like, what are we going to do with it? Like, how can we push it forward while keeping it still Isle? And I think the two biggest ones, which we've kind of already seen a lot of, but one was having the invasion come up from underground, and that makes puts a lot more dungeon in your Dungeons and Dragons for that setting, which is really cool. Like I think that adds a lot to it, just there. And then the other thing that we're doing structurally with it, and it actually had a little bit of effect on Nile Empire and some of our other design, was we realized, looking through the Cosm book for the old ones, like everything in this is about the realm. I mean, the Cosm, not the realm. Like it doesn't really tell you anything about what's going on in England or Norway or any of that. And we're like, and that's the joy of Torg, is how these alien invading cosms affect the real world where they land. So that if you know London, you can be like, there's a landmark that I recognize. Like it keeps you grounded on certain things. And so on this version, we're like really emphasizing that heavily. And I think it opened up a lot of space to be different, but still recognizably Isle.
Cool. All right. I think we're going to wrap it there. So yeah, we rambled definitely today. The two of you that we see on Christmas Eve will be happy to.
Love being here drinking eggnog. Yep, I reckon.
Yep. So yeah. So yeah, we'll talk more about other stuff.
I can answer Kevin's question that just posted.
Oh yeah, that one really quick.
Year 2 is not going to be separated by Cosm.
Yeah,
it will.
You'll have all the Cosm background.
Yeah. I think what he meant was like, are we going to be doing Cosm source books, like the actual like doing Terra? And
no. Okay, so if you're talking about going into the other worlds, so, and this is all subject to change, everyone. But in my mind, we're not going to go into other Cosms until the end of the Possibility War. And at the end of the war, one of two things happen. Either we've won and we're in a position to start exporting freedom to other Cosms and explore it. Or we have lost and the refugees need somewhere to go. So like either way, after the war, the game becomes about, okay, let's go to other Cosms. That's where we'll put our emphasis on creating your own Cosms and adventuring without a background of war and more a background of exploration. That plan could change, but that's where my mind is at right now.
Cool. All righty. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Deanna and Darrell.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for sticking with us.
Yeah. And this will go up on YouTube probably by Sunday, if not before. And otherwise, I will see you on Monday.
See you on Monday.
All right.